I submitted this and a couple other paintings this year for the Right Place survey. I was in I guess it was 4 or 5 years ago, the last survey?
Every 3 years.
Every 3 years. So I think I was in the last survey. Landscape painter. I'm from Athens, near Athens, Georgia. I've been painting for about 37 years now. I've been painting landscapes for about 35 of it. And I still feel like I'm developing my craft. Almost there. I'm going to talk about this painting in particular. There's a whole group of paintings of water from South Georgia and North Florida. I grew up in North Florida. North Florida, 37 years ago, 40 years ago, was a completely different place than it is now. Parts of it still exist, but a lot of it's gone. When I was little, my parents took me to Oak Swamp, and I have some pretty cool memories of it. So this comes from about 4 years ago. A friend of mine had been bugging me and said, "You need to go see this because you need to paint from here." And at the time, I hadn't really been painting water yet. I've been painting skies and landscapes and interior forest, and also landscapes from battlefields in Civil War battlefields for about 20 years, and then I did a whole series of paintings from northeastern France where Americans fought in the First World War. So I came home and I was trying to concentrate and getting back into painting southeastern landscape. And I started spending time on the water. And a large part of what I'm doing is being environmentally aware. It's not just about making art. It's also creating an awareness with the viewer and creating a connection with the viewer where they have an emotional investment in the place as much as I do. I've said this a couple of times, is when we see this, we're looking at a diminished nature. This is beautiful. But the Okefenokee had been clear-cut in the early 20th century. And you're looking at, and there's a lot of man-made impacts. And then the other thing you're seeing is when you're seeing this is, if you had been at the park 10 years before I was there, this would have been a wall of cypress trees and gum trees. What's happened is, about 8 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, the Okefenokee had huge fires, and they burned all summer. And part of them, they burned through this section, so what happened was the fires came up and they were extremely hot because they hadn't, the Forest Service had been suppressing fires. So these fires, we were in a drought, these fires burned hotter and deeper, they burned into the peat. So they ended up killing a huge amount of trees. So all the trees that you see dead or falling down are from the fire killing them. And so what you're looking at over a prairie of grasses. And the cypress trees are basically gone. They're all about this tall now. They're growing back. So you're looking at something that's been altered, but it's still amazingly beautiful. And given the space to regenerate, it'll do it. It's just a simple matter of if there's enough water there, and if the water stays clean, we protect it. So that's why I'm painting these. I love being outside, and I'm trying to create things that the viewer makes the viewer feel outside, but also makes you want to get outside. I want to impact my audience in a way that makes them not passive. I want the communication to be physical. I want to change the way you see things. It's hard to describe here, but if you see a body of work that's like 20 paintings, by the time you get done looking at them, you'll have a little bit different way of looking at nature around you and seeing things. Because I've had people teach me how to see. I spent some time out in the prairies. A friend of mine said, "You need to come paint prairies." So I went and painted prairies for 2 years. Went out to Missouri and Kansas. And they gave me an appreciation for all these flowers and small grasses and all these tiny things. And it's affected how I paint things now. So when you're looking at this, I'm trying to catch the cypress trees, there's gum trees, there's some grass in there. There's not, this is pretty simplified view of it. But as you get closer, when I want to paint all these little tiny things so that you feel like you're actually looking at it. And then when you turn around, the next time you're in your yard, you go, oh wow, I didn't see that before. You know, some little tiny flower. Or just, you're driving along the road and you'll see a wetland and go, oh, what's there? The thing is, pretty much everybody that knows since people here is like, I paint the paintings, I work like right here with it. I use computer monitors, and I usually between 10 and 20 photographs overlapping, because your eye doesn't actually see how your camera tells you one thing, but that's not really how you see. So I use lots of different images and videos sometimes to capture how it really feels, and not how the program in your camera tells you it looks. Same thing, I learned that when I was using film photography. I realized that the camera wasn't capturing what I was, and I went and talked to some teachers of photography that you can't do that. It's like you have to photograph different parts of it. So that's what I started, and I still do that. I'll look at one and put it together, because actually, I'll show you something you might not see is, those trees are repetitions of the same tree. And there's two more places in that painting where the trees repeat themselves. Almost, I think it's this one and this one repeat. Because when I was shooting the picture for this, I shot a bunch of pictures, but one of them was, as I was floating, I was panning with my camera, but not moving. So you can take your camera, hold it still, and just let the canoe move you. And the program in there will catch some things, it'll catch the water accurately, but it'll start repeating things on the horizon. Which is actually kind of cool, because it actually makes it look more, to me it looks more like, instead of putting photographs together, it looks more real anyway. And so as I'm painting, I know I'm repeating things, but sometimes the repetitions make for, it's almost like music, like a note that keeps coming back, so it keeps a theme going. Most people never even see that. In my bigger, wider paintings, typically there'll be places that repeat, small things that will repeat, and I won't catch them until I'm halfway done with the painting and realize what I've done. How long have I been talking?
8 minutes.
8 minutes, wow. It's hard to talk about just one single painting.
Questions?
Yeah, no, ask questions now, because it's a single painting. I think I've talked about this painting as much as possible, but, so yeah, ask a question.
Well, I'm just fascinated by your photography. So you might stand there, or even though you're floating in a canoe or whatever, but you might get images like on top of each other. You might put several on top of each other.
Literally, one of the ways I use my camera, which is my phone. I shoot everything with my phone because it's the thing I have with me all the time. And I've got a pretty good one. But you can take your camera, and when you're in pano, you hold it like this, and I'll do this when I'm in a canoe. It's easy because all you have to do is hold still. But if I'm doing it and I'm shooting like the bank of woods or the edge of the forest or something, I just do this. And you just move it, and it takes a different photograph than when you rotate. Because what happens is that the camera's program's got it's a single point vanishing point, vanishing point. So the camera's got that in its program. It's a program, it's not an optical thing in these. So, but when you move this way, you're moving the focal point perpendicular to your picture plane, whereas if you turn it this way, you're rotating it, you bend things.
Yes.
And then there's a couple other tricks but you have to really pay attention to. When I'm shooting, I always have my grid up, so I can see things straight and perpendicular to how they really are, because the camera will bend things on the edges of stuff. And they'll push, the other thing is cameras push things away from you, so I'm always trying to pull everything I'm looking at closer to me, because your camera's lying to me.
And this is not considered photorealism.
No, what I call it, to me it's contemporary realism. If it was photoreal, when you walked up to it, there's a couple other things that are photoreal. It's not a one's better than other, it's just not how I paint it. Photoreal, when you walk up to it, you see the edges of all the little things. It's just like looking at a photograph up close.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to take photoreal to an extreme, Chuck Close is making pixels, right? So, but that's not what this is. And if it was, it wouldn't look like it is. So when you walk up to this,
You can see the paint.
it's almost, it's realism using a slightly expressionistic way of brushwork. The actual painting is very loose. The other thing is you're looking at is painting like this will take me 3 or 4 months. But I only work, not constant, but I only work on it when I'm really inspired to work on it, and then I'll work on a piece for 3 or 4 hours really hard. So I'll be, but making only one color at a time, or a variation of a color. So I'll gradually build it. If you go to my Facebook page, my Instagram page, you can actually see progressions of paintings, and I don't do any drawing. I paint the horizon first and then paint my way out of it. You know, it's not like I'll paint the trees in and paint the sky. That sky is completely painted before I put the first tree up. Because you can't, there's another one of my, I guess, philosophies is everything has to be painted how it actually feels. And so that's something else in photographic realism. A lot of times everything has the same surface quality and the same light bounce off of it, the tactile feel of it. For me, water feels different than the sky, and it's painted different. You know, trees are painted, certain trees, bark, everything, they have different surface and the light bounces off them differently. So there's all these color things, but there's also all these surface things. So there's a big difference in surface in things in here. And then the thing I've learned lately in water is leaving paint that catches light, physically catches light, not just pretends to be light, but it actually catches it. So you've got a tiny bit of relief on the painting. So there's a surface to things. Like if you look at that, you can actually see how much paint's sticking off the surface of the painting. And like I said, the sky is painted completely different than how I paint the water. And in that way, all those contrasts build space. And it gives your eye little anchors to hang your reality on.
To me, it's the water. I mean, I'm just absolutely.
The thing is, you can block the water out, the trees act different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then if you do, the funny thing is, if I can turn that upside down, it will blow your mind. And take a picture of it and turn it upside down, and it feels upside down. Because the water actually comes at you at that point. When you turn it upside down, you can actually see how the water is structured.
Yeah.
So you said you paint close, but do you paint and then you step back and then you come back in, or do you?
I do, and actually I've had to put, I've got wheels on my chairs. I just destroyed another one of my painting chairs. I wrecked the footrest on it because I'll push back. And so I've wrecked the rest. I put a piece of that, the office plastic, so you don't destroy your floor, because I have wrecked floors because of how much I roll around. So, and I'm working 10 feet wide now, so I even roll around more. Pretty much everything in part of my studio actually has wheels on it, so I move things around all the time. I wish I could show you. I've got, Stephanie, you say from that wall to here? My painting wall is this long. And I've got about 15 paintings going. And, a 10-foot painting, 2 8-foot paintings, and a bunch of little ones, and they're all up, and I move them around. And so no, I'm working, actually, typically I'm working down about this high, I'm sitting down, I've got 2 different chairs, depending on the height I want to work. Sometimes I'll stand up, but I'm this close when I'm working. And I have to wear reading glasses now. And when I started wearing reading glasses, it actually changed my painting. I put them on one time and looked at the painting, and I was like, oh crap.
How do you choose like what to work on if you're working on a bunch at once? Do you just sort of?
Whatever the muse moves me. It's sometimes it's what paint I have left on my palette, and I'll go, ooh, I can use that on this painting. So there's a lot of efficiency involved. But typically, I'm trying to push them all along. So the ideal is, as I finish paintings, I have other paintings that are almost finished, and then other paintings that are just started. So I'm never in a spot where I actually have to think about what I'm doing. I just go to the one that I feel like, oh, I see what I need to do. And a lot of times I'll push them out of the way. I'll get them to a point where like I don't know what to do, and I'll just put them up high and wait for it until I'll see it, and then I'll see something, and it'll go, oh, I know exactly what to do. Because the other thing when I'm painting is I'm trying to take chances. You know, I want to be right on the edge of screwing it up, because that's when you're actually making choices that matter, and that's how you get better. Is like, you know, is failing, and the failing is just scraping the paint back off, but sometimes there's another aspect about when I paint skies. A lot of the work that's on top of them with branches is wet on wet. So I'll paint that. I'll paint for 6 or 7 hours to get the sky laid in, and then I'll start painting trees on it while it's wet. And you can't make a mistake because it's oil paint. So I mean, you get a smudge, so you're done. If you make a mistake, you have to stop and let it dry, and then sand it off and scrape it. So there's a lot of. Same thing with the water. There's a lot of wet and wet on top of wet on wet. So it's a built up thing. So the idea is you're looking at, you know, 70 or 80 times into a painting, but with a lot of energy. So I'm never tired. You know, I've got this much energy while I'm working, and once I get tired, I stop and walk away from it. You know, and sometimes when I get to that point, that's when I do the grunt work on another painting that it's so far in the underpainting that nobody will ever see it, and I can do it tired and nobody will notice.
So are you working on commission, or are you working on pieces?
Luckily, this year, I've been painting for 4 years full time. And right before I had done 20 paintings for this show, it had been up a week, and it closed for COVID. It was in Asheville. And it was it would have been devastating, except the previous year I've been working really hard, and I've got a double large commission for the State Botanical Gardens of Georgia, and I had 6 other commissions. I've never had so many commissions in my life, and they're all right now. And so I'm painting through next year with commissions right now, and I'm fitting in paintings that I just want to paint that place. You know, the urge. Right now it started, we were up in North Georgia, and I was lucky enough, somebody's like, we need to go to Wildcat Creek. And Wildcat Creek is a tributary of the Savannah River Basin anyway. It's all shoals, beautiful little waterfalls one after another. And I'm painting one of those right now just because I want to paint it. So I'm painting, right now I'm lucky enough to I'm doing these commission paintings, and I get to fit in work, you know, that really moves me, that I think that I want people to see, you know.
What does it mean for you to be selected for a show like this?
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean for you to be selected for a show like this?
Pretty damn nice. I like I've always liked the premise of the show. I've applied 3 times and gotten in twice. The first time I probably wasn't mature enough to get in anyway, and then I waited about 10 years later. I was showing at a gallery in Asheville, and they said, "Do you want to enter this?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've got a painting." And the last painting was a painting of a pine tree, big, tall painting, and it was on that wall over there. I was very happy about it being here. And then this one, I entered 3. And out of them, I'm actually, this is the one that makes, that out of, if I had to have one, this was it. And it makes me really happy. I mean, I probably giggled. Did I giggle when I walked through the door, or did I just go, ha? I giggled when I walked in the door and I saw it on that wall, and it's like, it's lit, and I'm like, oh boy, I'm really happy about this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a big deal, and I get to enlarge my audience, and people see what I'm doing, because it's not just painting to me. It's, I want to convey a lot more than just a beautiful image. I'd like people to walk away from it and actually feel like they're connected to what's around them more than they were before they saw it.
It's extraordinary.
Thanks.
It's beautiful.
It's an honor. Cannot say how fortunate I feel to be doing what I'm doing. You know, it's hard work, and and I have to maintain. I have to focus and work at it. But I'm dead lucky to be able to do something that I really love.
Your goal is very noble about being connected.
The thing is, you can't help it. All you have to do is pay attention and realize, yeah, you're connected. You're connected, and it's a friend of mine in St. Louis that makes this sign. He's an ecologist, and not an ecologist. He's actually he's a fungi and lichen guy that worked at the Missouri Botanical Gardens, and he was trained by a guy who said like this, and the guy's like, everything's connected. You can't study one thing and think that what you're studying, and art's the same way. You know, you're part of society's fabric. You can choose to be very aware of it. You can choose to be very aware of the environment around you, or you don't. And I think your life's richer by being outside. And you know, I like the idea that these inspire people to go see things, or feel like they're outside, or you know, maybe even, you know, at the very least, if they make you feel like you're there, that it's triggering things that are good for people.
Certainly worth saving. Certainly worth saving.
Oh, my God,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So, did anybody ask you already why you did a bright, happy, bluish? I mean, most people think swamp, they think dismal, and dark.
No, see, have you ever been paddling?
Oh yeah, and I love a dark, dismal swamp myself.
Well, this is.
But is it
Have you been to
mentioned?
Okefenokee?
No.
Okay.
I've only been down in Mobile Bay, and of course right here off of our arsenal.
Well, they're all different kinds. Okefenokee is almost, parts of Okefenokee are almost prairie.
Oh.
They're open. Same Everglades is like that. Payne's Prairie down in middle Florida is like that. So it's considered, it's almost, there's a lot of grass, there's actually a lot more openness than you think. And this actually is near the headwaters of the Swanee River. And this is actually a pretty big expanse of water. But behind that is a large flat expanse that I was telling people earlier that when the fires were Okefenokee, that burned, and that's why that's so clear of trees. It did, you know, 10 years earlier than I was there, that would have been a wall of cypress trees. But they were burned back, and they're regrowing, you know, and so now if you were up in the area, you just see all these tree trunks bleaching out, laying all over with things growing back up around them.
Sure.
So, I mean, I had a day out there that was like that, but I didn't, you know, that's not, you know, it was raining and it was pretty, and I've actually got some interior shots of being in there, but this is the one, to me, that this is the epitome of Okefenokee. The water, it's black water, so it's like a mirror, so when you're paddling, it's almost like you're flying, because you're almost weightless, especially when you're cutting through water that's dead flat. And like I said, it was dead flat right before this. So
Well, look at this shows a lot of
if you get a chance, my Facebook page, my Instagram page have links to my website. My website's there's 20 of these paintings, and then there's probably about 10 years worth of work, but eventually it should be like 20, 30 years worth of work that I'm just putting on there. and you can see all the different ways. This is just one narrow, my work is all over the place.
Okay.
So I think I've covered everything. Any more, the last question?
I think it's wonderful. But of course, what I've heard from most artists is that if I could really communicate it with words, I'd be writing a book. So this is my level.
Oh,
This
that's-
is how I communicate.
And if you do get, I think on my website, there's a link to, it was a radio station did an interview that I think is probably even a better talk than this one. And it's actually, it covers these paintings. And it's a pretty interesting talk on this. And the radio show is pretty cool too, but anyway. It's called Brown Mountain Lights, but it's on that, my page. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for
John,
taking the time to do
wonderful.
this.
Yes,
Wow.
absolutely
Wow.
wonderful. I know, and look up close, Francis, it's amazing.